Sometimes an organization, just like a person, hits a real crossroads, a moment that forces it to pretty much redefine itself and figure out a new path forward. Today, we're going to dive into that exact story with the National Association of Realtors. We'll explore their new plan to navigate a period of just massive change and really reshape their entire future.
And to really get a feel for the stakes here, you just have to look at this quote from NAR CEO Nike Wright, its most turbulent and darkest period. I mean, those are incredibly powerful words, right? It paints a picture that's not just about a few hurdles, but a genuine existential crisis. It totally sets the stage for a story about recovery, leadership, and the fight for the association's very soul.
So, at the center of this whole turnaround story is the outgoing president, Kevin Sears. And his departure, it's not just some routine changing of the guard. It really marks the end of a very, very unusual and demanding chapter for the entire association.
679. That's the number of days Kevin Sears served as NAR's president. We're talking nearly double the typical term. And look, this wasn't some planned extended stay. No, this was a presidency born out of sheer necessity. Sears had to step into the role back in January 2024 after not one but two leadership resignations. So basically, his entire job was crisis control 24/7. He spent his time crisscrossing the country, meeting with members, and just working relentlessly to try and repair the huge amount of damage that had been done to the organization's reputation.
So what exactly was this darkest period they're talking about? And how did Sears manage to steer the ship through, well, such a storm? Let's break down what he actually got done.
According to CEO Nike Wright, the list is, it's pretty staggering. Sears is credited with helping to stave off bankruptcy, which is huge. He also managed the landmark commission settlement decision and pushed through a brand new 3-year strategic plan. So we're not just talking about keeping the lights on here. This was about a fundamental rescue mission to stabilize the organization when it was at its absolute most vulnerable.
Okay, so with some of that chaos settled, the focus is now shifting. It's time to look to the future. The association is looking ahead, and that all starts with putting a new leadership team in place to carry that work forward.
And for 2026, here's the new lineup. Kevin Brown is set to take over as president, with Christine Hansen stepping into the president-elect role. This transition, it really signals a clear move away from just crisis management and towards a more forward-looking strategy.
But, a new leadership team doesn't just magically solve everything. In fact, a huge debate at their recent meeting shows there are still some really tough questions on the table about internal policies and what transparency really means for members and their clients.
The big debate was all about this one controversial idea. Should agents have to tell their clients about referral fees? One side was like, absolutely. It's all about transparency and building consumer trust. The other side, though, was pumping the brakes, worried about unintended consequences, and saying the whole thing was being rushed.
And when it actually went to a vote, the results were really interesting. A huge majority, we're talking 66.3%, voted for the proposal. So that seems like a clear win for transparency, right? Well, not so fast.
So even with all that support, the proposal was defeated. And get this, it was by the tiniest of margins. To pass, it needed a 2/3 majority, which is about 66.7%. It fell just short. It just goes to show you how tough it can be to make major policy changes in an organization this big, even when a lot of people are on board.
And this whole internal struggle over policy, it's directly tied to the massive external pressures NAR is facing. To really get that, we've got to look at the cold, hard numbers that are shaping their new reality.
So right now, as of their last meeting, NAR's membership count is sitting at just under 1.5 million. That's a ton of real estate pros across the country.
But, and this is the real kicker, look at the number they're actually using for their 2026 budget, 1.2 million. That tells you everything. They are proactively bracing for a potential drop of almost 300,000 members in the next couple of years. That's huge.
So what's the financial game plan for this leaner future? Well, for starters, annual dues are staying put at $156 for 2026. On the advocacy side of things, their Realtors Political Action Committee, or RPAC, seems to be on track, having raised almost 86% of its goal for the year. So the strategy seems pretty clear. Plan for a smaller organization, but fight to keep your financial and political clout.
So that brings us to the big question, right? The National Association of Realtors has come through its darkest period, it's got new leaders ready to take the helm, and a new strategic plan in hand. But as it gets ready for a future with potentially fewer members and a tighter budget, is this new game plan going to be enough to truly define its next chapter and rebuild for the long haul? Well, that's the story we'll all be watching.